Hi everyone, my name is Jen. I'm Director of Marketing at Wing, and I am the host for today's panel discussion. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I never take it lightly when somebody takes time out of their day to attend a webinar or a panel, so really thank you for coming. Before we dive into the content, I just had a few housekeeping items to go through. So because of the size of the call, everybody has joined muted today. However, we really want to encourage questions. This actually is a live panel. I know it seems like a thing of the past, but because it's live, take advantage of it and get your questions answered in real time. So use the chat feature or use the Q&A feature. I'll monitor both, and then we'll save time at the end for questions. We are recording the call today, and everybody who registered, you will receive a link to watch it later this week. Please share the link with your colleagues. The more eyeballs on this content, the better, because beating the bots is a collective effort. And as far as our agenda goes, it's really brief. I didn't even have to make a slide for it, but we'll have these experts introduce themselves. We'll dive into some of the questions that I've prepared, and then we'll have dedicated time around the half hour or 35 after mark, where we'll dive into audience questions. And then you might remember that we are offering a $200 gift card today. So anybody that registered is eligible to win. And so we'll announce the winner live at the end of the webinar. And then we also have a special surprise for everyone that our friends at Voucherify put together. So I'll share that at the end as well. So now 2 more minutes of your time just for me to set the scene of why we decided to host this webinar today. So we're here to talk about promo fraud. When I say promo fraud, I'm talking about multiple account exploitation, unauthorized code sharing, return manipulation, and these might all seem like very small things, but these are things that are costing retailers and brands a ton of money. So I know I didn't say we were going to have scare tactics, but in last year alone, retailers in the US lost $89 billion to fraud, right? That's a really big number, and it's more prevalent than you think. So 73% of retailers said that they experienced some sort of promo fraud in the last 12 months. And last Black Friday, a third of Black Friday shoppers were actually completely fake, right? So it's a really prevalent problem. And it's not only costing retailers and brands a ton of money, it's also a data quality issue. So it's a customer experience issue. It messes with your brand's targeting, personalization, decision-making, and promo fraud erodes the experience for valid users. So that's why we're here today. We're here to explore what is and isn't working when it comes to stopping promo fraud, and we're going to learn how brands are detecting and stopping abuse without hurting the customer experience for valid customers. All right, so I'm not going to share much more today, but I do want to get our panelists to introduce themselves. So Amy, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Cannon, and I am here representing Voucherify, which is a platform that allows our customers to build custom loyalty programs, referral programs, coupon codes, and other offers. So happy to be joining the discussion today.
Wonderful. And how about Katie?
Hi guys, I'm Katie Intrader. I'm a VP here at AtData. I have about 15 plus years in the email marketing space, and my role at AtData, we help our clients both on marketing services and fraud sides to kind of maintain the integrity of their email databases, whether you're validating your emails, you're adding engagement insights, demographics, and also protecting your database from fraud.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. And Prakash?
Hi, thanks, Jen. And nice to meet you all. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Wing. And at Wing, we're a data capture and engagement platform that brands use to engage consumers, collect data directly from them, and also do value exchange. So, I think the topics today are right down the line of the stuff we think about every day.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you three on. Very different perspectives, very different companies. And so just the wealth of knowledge today is fabulous. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because you don't want to see a PowerPoint. You want to see the faces of expert people. And to get us started, why don't we sort of learn what we're up against? So promo fraud is not a new topic, but the landscape has changed drastically in recent years. So I'd love to hear from your perspectives. How has the nature of promo fraud evolved in the last couple of years? And maybe if you could touch on, especially with the rise of AI. So Prakash, would you like to take that one first?
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, so a key tactic for high value promotions has always been defending against bots. And in the past, I think CAPTCHAs were effective and you know widely used. But that's no longer the case. AI bots can now learn from being blocked, and they'll keep trying until they succeed. And in fact, blocking actually helps them improve. So the emerging approach today is to avoid giving bots feedback. Instead of blocking them, use technology that can detect them silently based on their interaction patterns, quarantine them, and then filter out the data they share. Um, it's also becoming more and more important to verify key inputs, confirm email addresses with one-time passwords, for example, before accepting the data.
Thank you. Thank you. How about Katie?
Yeah, so I think, AI has changed dramatically, but what hasn't is that all promotions kind of hinge on one data field, and that's an email address. And the email is exactly what's being exploited the most these days. So with AI, fraudsters are, they now have a broader toolkit to automate this abuse. They can generate realistic names and email permutations that pass most kind of typical form validations and appear completely legitimate. So fraud is really no longer sloppy and easy to spot with the eye. It really mimics, real customer behavior, and it's learning really fast. So if your systems are, treating every email address as a person without adding any deeper analysis, you're already a step behind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, artificial intelligence bots been around for a while in the promotional space, specifically the e-commerce space, of course, right? Classic examples, scalper bots buying up tickets or, retail bots buying up products at launch for resale before genuine customers can do so. But how AI is used now to be even smarter about committing promotional fraud, that is changing. And with the democratization of AI, really making this so accessible to everyone, with the right prompts, some of these strategies can be enacted by essentially anyone at very low cost. So one pattern that we've been seeing accordingly is the predictive abuse of campaign patterns, right? So here AI is enabling attackers to analyze past promotional activity and then anticipate new campaigns to be taken advantage of immediately and repeatedly before, again, genuine customers can get there. So, this can be done through actions like scraping of past promotions, right? So their attackers, AI bots are collecting and analyzing things like promotional emails, site banners, social posts, terms and conditions across time. They're then taking advantage of that pattern recognition. So using this data to identify rules. So, for example, realizing that 10% off always goes live on Friday at 9 a.m., or that abandoning a cart under very specific conditions will trigger a re-engagement coupon within an hour, right? So with that data, then bots can be programmed for automated exploitation, right? Acting exactly when these campaigns launch to stock up on discounted inventory, typically for reselling or to stock up on other incentives, depending on the offer. And just kind of digging into what Katie shared there on kind of the account email creation, obviously then AI can help create multiple accounts and use them at scale there, right? Knowing that the same first order discount is used every quarter, right? Creating a network of fake accounts to repeatedly trigger that promotion.
Whew. All right, I'm overwhelmed and I'm scared. I'm glad we have this topic today so we can talk about how to manage all this, right? It seems sort of like an insurmountable task, but I know that we have strategies, so we'll get to that. But one thing that I'm always interested in is sort of, are there any myths or misconceptions that you think, marketers or brands might have when it comes to fraud and digital promotions? And sort of what are those myths? So Amy, you want to go first?
Yeah, for sure. So not to lean more into your overwhelm, but honestly, I think, a misconception is really the scale and intent of fraud. And thus the impact, is often a strong and dangerous misconception, right? There is really a strong underestimation in the absence of data on just how big of an issue this is, and also how coordinated, right? So marketers often believe that fraud in digital promotions is, relatively low impact, low scale, more of kind of an ad hoc issue triggered by a few individual customers customers, kind of exploiting loopholes. But in reality, promotional fraud is often intentional, often coordinated, and highly scalable. Again, especially when bots or organized abuse networks get involved here, right? So obviously, we've seen digital coupon redemption having substantial growth in recent years. Correspondingly, though, that's been accompanied by increased abuse. 81% of coupon abuse attempts have originated from serial abusers, right? So many assume that handing out kind of a few extra discounts or points isn't that big a deal, but over time, unchecked fraud really erodes margins, damages brand trusts, and skews your campaign performance data as well, right? Which can lead to some poor strategic decisions accordingly.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Katie, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, kind of doubling down on what Amy explained, but the biggest misconception that we hear from marketers is that fraud is just kind of the cost of doing business. And honestly, that mindset is really risky. The real cost isn't just the free product that you're going to give out, it's the junk data that slips into your CRM, because this data really starts to kind of degrade your future campaign performance, it distorts your audience engagement insights, and it creates these really long-term kind of inefficiencies. In fact, so we had a CPG client of ours who launched a monthly or a promotion, and their entire monthly budget was blown within just one day of going live. They had so much fraud, it had scaled so dramatically. So they've now added our fraud solution in place and added some controls, but we're still actually seeing a 40 to 50% fraud rate to this day. Luckily, we're able to catch it for them, but it has scaled pretty dramatically. So it seems like something that's not impactful, but it's quietly behind the scenes incredibly impactful.
Yes. As the person that manages Wing's email database, that just made my heart like race. All right, Prakash, what have you heard from the market?
Yeah, so I would definitely echo what Amy and Katie said, and kind of related to all that is I think one myth is fraud is just too complex or unpredictable to plan for and control. So I think this goes to this all is quite scary, but in fact there's things you can do about it. I think which is why we're having the session today. Most automated fraud relies on tactics that are consistent, repeatable, and scalable. It's stuff they have to do at scale to make money. And that means they're also detectable. And as one example, we had a client that saw email signups to a promotion suddenly spike from 10,000 a day to 300,000 a day. And all the emails were actually valid emails. They corresponded to valid inboxes. But in that particular case, a simple change, which was we enabled verifying emails immediately with a one-time password. It stopped the attack cold just because it was exploiting a limit in the bot's capabilities. So, it may have felt like that the brand was powerless to do anything about it in that moment. But in fact, there was a simple step that in this case did block that bot. So there's ways you can control it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, so you talked about Prakash, sort of that big jump, right, that they saw in emails in that one day. So maybe we can talk about before we get into risk mitigation, some of those like risk signals. So Katie, have you seen that there are certain types of promotions that are like the most vulnerable?
So you're not going to love this answer, but honestly, all promotions are essentially vulnerable. Whether, of course, you've got your high value offers, your referral programs, your instant reward redemptions. Those are all, typical kind of prime targets. But any of those where you're prioritizing user convenience, you're making it really easy for your customers, and you don't have any protection in place, are going to be completely vulnerable. And if you think about it, if it's easy for your customers to do, it's going to be incredibly easy for fraudsters as well to try and game the system.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like the answer, but it makes sense, right? So, okay. So Amy, maybe what are some of the early signals or patterns that should raise people's red flags that something's being taken advantage of?
Yeah, for sure. So, some big red flags to look out for include high return rates immediately after purchases are made, specifically high return rates for promotions that trigger future purchase incentives or things like, bonus loyalty points that can provide future benefit based on prior action. In this case, a purchase that may or may not be valid if you're seeing customers do immediate purchase and flip returns. Now, because of this, we often recommend that any purchase-based incentives be automatically triggered post-return period or voided if the customer's purchase was returned, right? So customers attempting to use these incentives on future offers could be identified through those failed validation attempts and kind of blacklisted in the future. Other red flags to look out for include, of course, huge spikes in redemptions shortly after a campaign goes live that doesn't quite correlate with patterns of a viral spike or natural purchases, especially at odd hours or from the same IP range or device types. Also, suspicious user behavior, such as bulk signups with similar email patterns or unusually fast account creation to redemption timeline. So that's a big one as well. The speed of the actions can generally be a bit of a telltale sign to flag potential fraud rather than a genuine purchase, right? A human can't get from, the PDP to the cart to the checkout completion in a matter of seconds, but a bot can. So something to look out for there.
That's good insight. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I do want to remind everybody in the audience that we are taking questions. We'll have in probably 15 minutes, we'll take audience questions. So pop them in the chat, pop them in the Q&A, and we're going to continue to talk about risk detection and mitigation. So I know that we've sort of touched on lots of different types of promo abuse. So maybe it would help to just think about like one specific use case. I'm thinking about like a gamified instant win. I see this on every retailer site that I visit, right? It's like spin a wheel, get a code. So it seems like it's a really simple experience on the surface, but obviously there's a lot of things to consider. So maybe Prakash, we could start with you. For something like a spin to win experience, how can this be set up to deter fraud and at the same time not sacrifice the experience for, authentic, real people like myself who want to buy shoes?
Yeah, that sounds good. First of all, I think that case that you described, it's a simple one, but it actually is a good target because it is it's an instant win. It's meant to be easy for consumers to participate in, and it's delivering something of value where there's actually a budget assigned to that. And so it is a good case. And for marketing promotions, it's helpful to think about fraud prevention in three layers. First, bringing in the right traffic. So excluding visitors from, sweeps forums or maybe regions outside your target market. Second of all, validating participants. So limiting to registered users, if that's an option, enforcing participation limits, which might be by device or user ID, and using silent bot quarantining kind of technology, like I mentioned. Google's reCAPTCHA v3 is an example of this tech, and Wing has our own intelligent bot defense. And then, third, rewarding the right people. One sort of basic preferred practice is just avoid using multi-use reward codes. Use unique single-use codes. Keep track of who they're being given to so you can close the loop after redemption.
Wonderful, thank you. How about Amy, from your perspective, sort of what safeguards could somebody put in place?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, Jen, even what might seem like a simple experience, like an instant win game, can still be very vulnerable, right, without the right safeguards in place. So, from Voucherify's side and perspective, the key here is really building in granular and real-time control through every step of the promotional life cycle, again, while balancing that without creating too much friction for legitimate users. So, for some specific examples of this, I can share a little bit more about the validation rules that we have in our platform. So, for one, at the coupon distribution stage, our platform allows marketers to set up rules like, for example, allowing a maximum of one code to be generated per customer, so they can't game the system and keep getting more codes. We can also set up validation rules ensuring that a single promotion can only be used one time per customer. So that could be set using the IP address or email address. Though, as we know, for both of those limitations, they can be kind of loopholed around, right? Which is where those identity validation tools come into play so that these rules aren't bypassed by creating new accounts or using new devices. We also have other validation rules in our campaigns. So for example, one being that only the published owner of the code can use it. So in this case, the one who won the code through a gamified experience, publishing and linking that code to that customer. So what this does is it prevents coupon scraping sites from finding that code and sharing it for use by anyone who is not the rightful owner there. As Prakash mentioned, instead of using generic codes, distributing uniquely published single-use codes with strict redemption limits definitely dramatically reduces the risk of mass abuse from coupon sharing sites as well. Some more advanced safeguards can be set through dynamic metadata. So that can be including form submission data or behavioral patterns. As we kind of touched on earlier, the time to complete the spin to win flow to exclude the bots, right? So that metadata can be used to validate redemptions dynamically. So if we're seeing something suspicious, like a spin to form submission completed in under a second, as an example, that coupon could then be auto-voided or flagged or will fail upon use attempts. And then lastly, of course, support request throttling. So especially important when promotions go viral or are targeted by bots, you can limit, the spin and or redemption attempts from one source in a given window.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Katie, I know that y'all are the email experts, so maybe you could talk about how email intelligence can be used to spot junk signups before they enter your system.
Yeah, absolutely. So AtData processes over 4 billion monthly activity signals, and this really allows us to understand and assess the age and activity of an email address. So those older, more kind of actively used emails tend to be legitimate, whereas those brand new email addresses that we've never seen before, they're typically from risky domains like disposable emails. Those are often quite high risk. And so we're going to analyze the factors like the domain type, the user behavior, and even the historical usage of that email to generate a real-time risk score. And so this is really going to let you stop those fake or low quality accounts from entering your system. And it keeps your loyalty and CRM data clean literally from day one. So it really sits right at the top of the funnel, right as that email address is submitted, we can stop it kind of in its tracks.
Very cool. Very cool. Wow. So, all right, I will never take a spin wheel for granted again, knowing that there is so much that is happening that someone had to consider. And it's just crazy to think how something so simple can have a lot under the hood. So I know that we talked about like that one specific use case, but there's obviously a lot of other types of promotions. So are there other tools or techniques that you can think of that you'd like to mention that you think the audience would find helpful? Maybe Katie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of tools out there are, cost prohibitive, right? They're expensive. And I think we've tried to create a solution that's lightweight and really affordable. But in addition to kind of looking at the email insights, we'll also pair it with signals like IP, name and address, or even phone insights. And this can kind of help detect when one person is operating multiple fake accounts. Oftentimes they're trying to game referral programs or even those kind of first-time buyer incentives. And I also think it's crucial for those incentivized surveys and giveaways, which tend to attract a lot of bots and serial abusers. So, flagging these disposable email domains that have absolutely no behavioral footprint or history, I think is one of the easiest ways to protect your email database and to cut that revenue loss.
Very nice. Okay. How about Amy? Anything that you can think of?
Sure, yeah. So one technique that we often recommend, especially for campaigns that are prone to abuse, is to use non-monetary or low monetary value rewards to still motivate action, but reduce the appeal for fraudsters. So, things like exclusive content or early access instead of a discount, loyalty points that accumulate over time. Those are harder to exploit at scale. Limited time experiences, again, VIP access, priority shopping, harder, if not impossible, to resell, right? And tiered rewards based on real engagement, not just a form submission. Any non-immediate incentive is a good fraud deterrent, right? Fraudsters generally want to be kind of in and out with their reward or discount quickly, whereas those future incentives will be appealing to truly loyal customers.
That's a really good point. Yep. Prakash, anything from your end?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, I did want to note that Katie kind of mentioned the use of disposable emails, and we talked earlier about that case where we had a client that had this huge spike in daily email signups, and those were all disposable emails. So and it just kind of points to the fact that email is really this vector that fraudsters can take advantage of if we think of an email as being a unique person. Um, for high value promos, it turns out that, not surprisingly, but texting a one-time password to a user's phone number is a very effective defense, an effective way of identifying a person. And that's kind of led us to recently add support for this in Wing because it's easy to fake emails, but much harder, more costly to fake phone numbers, particularly a lot of phone numbers. And that makes SMS OTP good at blocking both bots and repeat participation by users that are trying to game the system. And so while in the past something like this might have added friction, most users are now used to getting OTPs in text messages. Phones even autofill the codes for you. And so, the one thing is just be sure to clearly separate this type of transactional text from your marketing SMS programs.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, thank you. We've talked a lot about like best practices and scenarios. So I was wondering if maybe you had some like real, we don't want to name names, but any real world examples that you can share and maybe some of the lessons learned from that. So Amy, would you like to go?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, one story that comes to mind, not a unique one, surely. Online retailer launched a buy one, get one free promotion around Black Friday, right? Hoping to create buzz with these deep discounts. However, minimal fraud prevention in place. So, bots quickly, pretty much immediately targeted the site, exploited the offer, to resell products for profit, which meant that genuine, real customers in the process couldn't complete purchases due to the system overloads. Ultimately, they had to pause the promotion. So, spoke about this earlier, but of course, reseller bots are a big one that I've seen in other customer circumstances as well. So, as we discussed earlier, putting limits on the number of products that can be purchased and discounts that can be used per customer per order and across the whole campaign can help with this too. Of course, checkout fraud prevention mechanisms can help prevent these types of bot sales from even going through in the first place. So, kind of summarizing lesson learned here, introducing simple safeguards like email verification, post-purchase checks, or even, as I've been discussing in a few of these answers, those time-based redemption limits really could have reduced abuse here without negatively impacting real, genuine customers.
Thank you. Prakash, would you like to share?
Yeah, so we had a global beverage brand that had a weekly sweep series that was taken over by bots, and this is a well-organized, well-run company, and they had basic fraud prevention in place already, CAPTCHAs, participation limits, and the protections worked until one day they didn't, and data from a sudden kind of influx of bot submissions started junking up their CDP, completely skewing their metrics. And but by replacing those interactive CAPTCHAs with intelligent bot defense, which is again that sort of silent quarantining technology, they were able to isolate the bot traffic and filter out all that junk data. And as a bonus, getting rid of the CAPTCHA reduced friction for real users. And overall, this worked so well that it's become their standard practice for this type of program.
Very nice. Katie?
Yeah, so this is a good one. So we work with the world's largest quick service restaurant, and previously they were allowing users to enter literally any email address to redeem a free breakfast item within their app. And with no fraud controls or email validation in place, they were completely flooded with fake signups and abuse at scale. And so once we implemented our solution, we immediately started blocking the bogus emails, and still to this day are identifying different patterns of abuse in real time. And honestly, every 6 months or so, there is a big influx that's completely different than 6 months prior. So not only did this, prevent lost revenue, but it kept their active loyalty database clean, and, which is honestly just as crucial for the long-term success. So even the largest, most prominent companies out there don't always have basic protections in place. And even something, as simple as kind of validating those emails or adding a fraud solution can dramatically protect your CRM database.
Thank you. Sorry, I was not laughing at your response. I was laughing at a question that came in, which is, great event. Can you confirm the duration is 3 hours? Are you available for the next 3 hours? Anybody? No? Okay. So I do want to get to Q&A. I always like to wrap it up though. Like, what is your one final thought or one final piece of advice that you have for folks that want to run secure promotions? So maybe Amy, do you want to go first? Your one piece of advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So it might be a little bit controversial, but I would say don't be afraid to also make customers work a little bit for greater incentives, right? So the more you're giving, the more that you can kind of feel comfortable asking in order to grant that offer. So, loyalty overall is moving to more of an emotional, full cycle, brand experience based relationship versus a purely transactional one, which suits that process as well, kind of the longer term engagement and gain.
Wonderful. Okay. Katie, your final piece?
Yeah, I think my kind of very simple main tip would be to start clean, right? So the goal of promotions and coupons is to bring in those new customers, but you should protect your email and loyalty database from the very first touch point with them. That single decision will save you thousands in the long run with fraud losses, and it's going to preserve your ability to personalize and market effectively over time.
Makes sense. Yeah. And Prakash, final words from you.
Yeah, so Amy had mentioned earlier that sometimes changing sort of instant gratification into something that actually, maybe takes a couple steps, can really deter fraud. And we already talked about the advantages of unique reward codes. Um, but one of the most secure and engaging promotion flows we've seen recently involves giving customers unique invitation codes to a promotion. So in stores, at an event, on receipts or product packaging, or even sent to loyal customers in personalized messages. So, a restaurant chain, Manchu Wok, they actually placed unique invite codes inside fortune cookies. And again, people could then use those invite codes to participate in a promotion and then actually get a pretty valuable discount off their next order in that restaurant. So as each user needs an invitation to enter, invite codes make promotions much harder to game, and it also makes them feel more exclusive, lets them target specific audiences, and again, going back to what Amy said earlier, it changes what was a one-off interaction into really more of a multi-touch journey.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you all. And we're so good. We're right on time, 35 after, and let's go to audience questions. So I think this first one is for you, Katie. So is there any recommended way to flag or clean junk data that's unfortunately already polluted the CRM? So we talked a lot about how to stop bad email addresses from getting in, but what if, oops, they're already there?
Yeah, so you can always take your email database and run it through validation. Of course, those disposable emails, a lot of time they're kind of considered hyper disposable. So maybe at the time of collection, they actually were deliverable, but now, many months later, they're probably undeliverable. And so running them through email validation is definitely going to flag and clean up the majority of them. We also, as it relates to fraud, could kind of do a historical look back. And we could take that data and really get a good understanding of which emails, looked nefarious and potentially, fraudulent. And then we could train kind of the model to be very specific to the types of fraud that you're seeing so that moving forward, we could kind of protect the database from the patterns that we've seen prior as it relates to kind of that fraud and abuse.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does. Okay, we had two very similar questions come in, and I'm actually not sure who the best one is to answer it. So jump in if you have an idea. So sometimes sometimes brands will give users the option to hide my email address when submitting a form. And so a new email address is created and then forwarded to their inbox. And so how do you separate those emails from actual bot emails? Who'd
I
like to
have an
take it?
answer for that one.
Okay, go for it.
That's good. So we see this quite often. In fact, the quick service restaurant I mentioned had the same issue. So what's interesting is that in order to use Hide My Email, you absolutely have to have a valid deliverable email, at least with Apple. And so there is actually validity in that Hide My Email. And so that's kind of where the additional insights provide a little bit more color as to is that person who they say they are, right? So we may have not seen that Hide My Email before, but we know that the address that was submitted typically matches up with what we see and the IP matches. And so I think it's a matter of kind of using that all of the insights that we are able to kind of pull in to give a good understanding of if that is that person that's hiding their email truly who they say they are. And most of the time, it is legitimate traffic. It's actually not fraudulent. So very different than disposable. Disposables typically are valid for a short period of time and then kind of disappear after that.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so this next one is who should handle fraud prevention? Is it marketing? Is it the dev team? Is it a financial department? Are there any recommendations? Amy, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, all sides of the organization really should be owning and holding responsibility for fraud prevention. This is really something that's so crucial that everyone touching any component of promotions needs to be aware of. Regardless of your role, you are responsible for doing your due diligence to ensure promotional and digital fraud is kept at bay and risk is reduced. I think we shared kind of a broad spectrum, even with some of the examples that we've shared earlier today of different departments, right, owning this responsibility, right? Marketers in charge of building those tight promotional validation rules and limits, development and IT, running CAPTCHAs, running bot monitoring, IP blocking, call limiting, and then the data and analysis teams keeping an eye out for those telltale flags we've mentioned, right? Like quick time to redemption, redemption spikes, returns right after purchase that can indicate fraud is occurring.
Yeah, I think a great indicator is who we had register for this webinar today, which were folks from all over the org. So we have marketers, product managers, risk folks, people from finance. It really does run the gamut. So it's a all hands on deck sort of thing. So. All right, maybe this next one for Prakash. So can blockchain technology play a helpful role in securing promos and preventing duplicate redemptions?
Well, that's a great question. Not one that comes up very often. I think there's room for innovation with blockchain. I think in all aspects of marketing, sales, and kind of digital relationships with customers. So I think that the whether you're using blockchain or not, I think that the key thing that underlies a lot of what we talked about today is, how can you distinguish a genuine customer and a genuine individual from, really interaction that isn't? And there's certainly ways to apply blockchain to solve that problem, but I think that really that's the key problem probably that kind of makes the difference, right? Identifying legitimate customers, legitimate, unique individuals, and would be very interested if there's some kind of blockchain-based solutions that are trying to do that. So, but it's probably an area where there's good opportunity.
Very nice. And this next question is a little bit related. So, can AI-driven anomaly detection algorithms currently identify abusive redemption patterns, or do patterns evolve too quickly for AI tools to keep up?
So I can start and more on the side of, I think, the engagement data capture side of the problem. And there really these techniques are very effective right now at identifying, and again, when I say these techniques, I mean techniques that are looking at the interaction patterns um, uh, with a web page and to sort of isolate not just the interaction patterns of what is happening on the page, but also what are the IPs are being used, what time of day is it, all aspects of the patterns around a certain interaction to give a score to a website visitor and say, is this likely a bot or not? Those technologies from our real use in the field at scale are working well. So we do think that there's good stuff to take advantage of there.
I can add to that a little bit too. So there there is a common sort of theme in the fraud space kind of called tumbling and sequencing. And that's where within the email address, this bot technology is able to create an influx of emails that look similar. So maybe the dot within the username is being moved around, but it actually resolves to the same email. Or they're adding a plus sign within the username, or they're even doing KD123, KD456. And so we tend to see these patterns in big sort of fraud influxes, and we can kind of catch and flag those earlier on. Sometimes we'll even see the same exact pattern across a variety of clients and then can stop it, for that particular client that is seeing that same pattern in real time. So I think AI and machine learning can absolutely continue to learn what these patterns look like and stop it in its tracks.
And just to add on from my perspective as well, yeah, AI is getting smarter, but also our offer platforms, email platforms, we have more and more data, right? So we have a really great data source to, train our own inspection algorithms to, yeah, flag what looks to be a pattern that might indicate fraud. And I found historically that those have been quite accurate accordingly in identifying causes for concern. But the scary blind spot, if you will, that I kind of referenced earlier is underestimation of the problem. I think that's something we have to keep an eye on as well, though we don't know what we don't know, right? Because there might be the more kind of insidious fraud that's a little bit harder to catch due to those non-obvious spikes. That's something that we just need to train our models to flag and look for.
Wow, thank you so much. I learned so much on this panel. I'm sure the audience did too. If anybody has more questions, I popped up on the screen sort of the general contact emails for AtData, Voucherify, and Wink. So please feel free to copy those and email more questions. All right, 1 minute left. Drum roll, please, for our special surprise and also the winner of the sweepstakes. So in terms of something cool, Voucherify put together this sort of walkthrough of how Wing, AtData, and Voucherify can work together in order to stop promo abuse. It's something that you can easily click through in about 5 minutes. It's sort of eye-opening to see how simple it is, yet how sophisticated it is. So I'll also send that in the follow-up email along with the recording. But please go ahead and click on that link. I also think I have it on a QR code if you prefer to go from your mobile phone. So, and then in terms of the winner of the sweepstakes, Wing actually has a random winner selection tool. So I updated it. I uploaded the registration list right before this. And I'm just going to click the button and see. Okay. Carrie Coy, congratulations. You are the winner of the gift card. So if you're on the call, fabulous. If not, I'll make sure to follow up afterwards either ways and so that you get your gift card. But thank you so much. Oh, Carrie, she's here. Wonderful. All right. Well, I will still reach out to you by email to fulfill that gift card. Thank you everybody for joining today. I hope that you found it valuable. We really enjoyed being here with you, and keep an eye out for the recording later on, and maybe we'll do some blogs, other white papers on the topic, since I think it's a really good one and a really relevant one. So thank you everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Bye.